Learned a few weeks ago, and towards the end of the book of Shemot in Parshat Ki Tisa, when Moses was begging God to be able to see him, God said to Moses, "You're not going to know my face. You'll know me from where I've been." And so then we understand that we connect to that which is divine through experience, through what we have learned. For us, I believe that for the Jewish people, we find God both inside of ourselves, but also in the context of community. And we try to do that. We find God when we experience and participate in Gemilut Chasadim and acts of kindness. We find God when we pray and reflect. And then we also find God, we believe, in learning. And when we learn and we aspire to, not only for knowledge, but we also aspire for more and more truth, and we understand what are the greater lessons of this life of ours, and what are the lessons that we find in this universe of ours. And then hopefully we translate them and bring them out. Well, the source of our learning, as we know, is our Torah. And so what I would like to do this morning, as we're developing, is teach a little bit about the Torah, this Shabbat, and the meaning of this particular Shabbat. Then I'll read a little section from the Torah so we get the flavor of the Kriya, the reading. And then I'm going to turn a little attention again to the Haftorah. For this is Shabbat Hagadol. It is the great Shabbat, or the big Shabbat, and it's the one that always comes immediately before Pesach. Tongue-in-cheek, somebody once taught that it's called Shabbat HaGadol, the big Shabbat, because services were at their longest. For this was one of the 2 times of year that the traditional rabbis would speak. They would speak about the halachas, the hilchot, and the dinim of Passover, all the laws and the rules concerning Passover, as we are entering into this period of serious preparedness. The rabbi spoke also, by the way, on Shabbat Shuvah, and that was the Shabbat, as you know, that is the Shabbat that comes between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and that's a very important spiritual time in our lives and the lives of our communities. Different types of understandings were taught, but yet there's something in Shabbat HaGadol, I think, that parallels Shabbat Shuvah. The word for Shabbat HaGadol probably comes from something else, and that is, this is the Haftorah that was chosen to be read. The Haftorah taken from the prophet Malachi says, "Behold, I will send the prophet Eliyahu to you before the coming of Yom Adonai Hagadol v'Hanorah." Yom Adonai, the day of God, Hagadol v'Hanorah, awesome in the fearful day. The context is found in the book of Kings. After the rebuilding of the temple, this is when Malachi's period was. This is the early 500s BCE. And it contained a promise that God will again receive the offerings of the people, which probably means the reconciliation of a relationship between God and the people. But wouldn't happen until after there would be a destruction and after the community would experience a lot of pain. And our ancestors, and certainly we find throughout our tradition, that there was a sense that the pain we experienced was in some way related to the behaviors of the people. And so our sinfulness and our wrongdoing and the corruption of the religious leaders and the priests and the political leaders of the time would lead to the destruction of our holy center, Yerushalayim, and the exile of our people. It echoes the cry of Isaiah also that we're familiar with from Yom Kippur, where Isaiah asks the people, what good is your fast if you don't take care of the poor, you don't take care of the hungry, if you trample on the weak? The Haftorah is a promise of and for this Haftorah, reconciliation. But the reconciliation takes place after there is a separation between God and the people. And the promise comes, according to the prophet of the Haftorah, through Eliyahu Hanavi, through Elijah the prophet, and it's made known through the people. And we see the reconciliation taking place. There's a metaphor that's given, which is really so very beautiful and so easily understood by every and any parent who raises children, and particularly after the period of adolescence and into adulthood, because what the prophet promises is that they will turn their hearts towards each other. The parents will turn their hearts to their children and the children to their parents. It's done, however, this reading, this Haftorah and Shabbat HaGadol, and where we are is in the context of today's Parsha, which is Parshat Tzav. It's the second section, the second Parsha of the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. And it describes, or I should say it continues to describe, the sacrifices that were brought into the temple of old. I have and I will undoubtedly speak about the meaning of the different sacrifices. I've done that many times. The reasons given for them and the meaning behind them. And I do think it's important that we go back in our learning to Rambam, who said it's the reading, and the rabbis actually after destruction said it's the reading of the sacrifice that replaces the sacrifice itself. And it's not that we're interested in the sacrifice of the animal on the altar. We're interested in the reasons, and we're interested in the deeper meaning that's behind them. And what does it say about our souls and our spirits and our psyches? So the first 7 chapters of Leviticus describe this religious practice that was done. It was a cultic practice done in our particular place in Yerushalayim, in the Holy Temple at a particular time. The last 2 chapters are the ones that we read today, and they are about burnt offerings and purifications for sin. And so let me try to bring this home and bring it together. I will conclude my comments here, and that is the following. It begins with Tzav, and Tzav is the name of the Parsha, and it means command. And God tells Moses that he has to command Aaron to have his sons, the priests, and himself bring the following offerings. Why is the language of tzav used? Tzav, by the way, tzadi vav, is the root of mitzvah. It is commandment. Because in our religious lives, those of you who are here with us now, I can say that we do that which we choose to do. Whether or not it comes as a commandment, we do that which we find comfortable, and that which we find meaningful. And there's no commandment like this, no language like this used for offerings that have to do with that which is pleasurable. So we're not commanded to give Thanksgiving offerings, but we are commanded to give these offerings. And I'll tell you there's 2 reasons why the language of tzav, as far as I know, is used. The language of commandment is used. And one is that the bringing of the sacrifice and all the work around the sacrifice for the Kohen wasn't all glory. It was some of it, it wasn't all pleasant. It wasn't all part of royalty. Some of it was really difficult. There was really heavy lifting that had to be done. It was bloody. And then after it was done and the burning of the animals would take place, the place where the sacrifice took place was really a mess. And there would be a lot of cleaning that had to be done. And it wasn't like everyone was jumping up. All the Kohanim were jumping up and saying, I want to do it, I want to do it. Although there might have been some of that also. But they had to be commanded to do it. And some responsibilities in life we attain and we internalize by virtue of the fact that there was someone in our lives that commanded us to do certain things. And so it's true here also. Some of the things that we do which aren't so pleasant, we continue to do them because we bring a sense of responsibility that came from what we learned as we grew up. And the second part of the commandment of being commanded, I think, has to do with the following. And here's where we draw the circle to Shabbat Shuvah, and what took place at that time of year for us. And that is this. For these the description contains sacrifices for forgiveness. Sacrifices that grow out of the fact that we make mistakes, we've done wrong, we've hurt, we've been violent, we've done things. These are sacrifices that grow out of a place of guilt. So I think it's easier for us to connect to God during times of either celebration, where we feel the fullness of life. We can express gratitude for the birth of a child, for example, or good things that happen to us. We can even access God during times of great difficulty, like now, where we're looking to God, and sometimes it's hard to access. We're looking to God to bring us comfort, to bring us healing. So we can thank God for our well-being, but it's much more difficult to come to God in the shadow of our wrongdoing, for the things that we're guilty for. And so that takes a commandment. That takes tzav. But out of that commandment, to be able to bring forth that which we've done, which is wrong, to be able to be honest with ourselves, to be able to respond to it and to be open to it, can come personal growth. And I think we all look for that as we look to find a way, a path to get closer to God. So I'm going to, and you can join me, we'll say the bracha of the Aliyah, and I'll read a little section of the Parsha.